Welcome to B2B Noble.
That's right, no double speaker gibberish, no talking heads. This is a safe place to talk about what you as professionals in the space can do to look like heroes to your bosses, make sales very happy, bring success to the organization, and that bottom line. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. I am Mary Olivieri here with two siblings, Liz and Mark Brohan, okay, just so we're clear that they're not married. And welcome to B2B No Bull. I'm surrounded by B2B expertise with these two, but here you're going to get straight talk, none of the jargon, just real insights about B2B marketing.
And we're super excited about our guest today, Lori McDonald. This is a woman who has no fear of big leaps and bold moves. She started her career as a tech career at NASA. Let me say that again. NASA, people. And we'll hear more about that in a minute. And then she moved on and started her own e-commerce advertising agency called Brilliance Business Solutions. And that has actually been ranked twice by Inc. magazine as one of the top 5,000 growing businesses. So congratulations to that.
Nice, thank you.
And now, in addition to all of that, she also owns a food manufacturing company, and they manufacture lefse up in Minnesota. So welcome, Lori.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you definitely have one of the most interesting LinkedIn profiles that we've seen in a while. So good for you.
Thanks.
I'm just really interested to know what made you go from running a digital commerce company to buying a lefse business. Was it the deliciousness?
It is a great question. It is a great question. Actually, I hadn't tried lefse before we started the process of looking into buying the company. But Brilliance has been around. Our e-commerce agency has been around since 1998, so for a while. And a few years back, we decided that we wanted to learn more about what it was like to be one of our customers. So we help manufacturers and distributors implement digital commerce. And we thought, wouldn't it be a great way to both diversify how we make money and also learn more about what it is like to be a merchant selling online? So we decided to look for a small manufacturing company that was selling online and that we saw opportunity to help them grow. And so I started to subscribe to different boards, online databases of businesses that were looking to sell, and we looked into a few. And then eventually we came across Norz and Lefse, which is in Rushford, Minnesota, and the owner there was looking to retire. They've been around for more than 40 years. And Lefse, if you're not familiar with it, is a Norwegian flatbread. It's like a potato-based tortilla.
And potatoes, come on.
Yeah.
Made of
it's
potatoes.
good stuff. And you normally eat it with cinnamon and brown sugar and butter. I mean, really, how can you go wrong with brown sugar and butter, really, right? And you roll it up. You can't. Yeah, it's served at the holidays. And so they were already, the majority of their sales were coming from Amazon. They had their own e-commerce site on Wix at the time. And we saw a real opportunity to help them grow. They had a lot of loyal customers, and it's about a 3.5-hour drive from where I live in Milwaukee. And so we saw this as a real opportunity to help them grow and also to help us learn. And it's really interesting because they have a really loyal customer fan base. And one of the fun things about, we decided to move their e-commerce site from Wix to BigCommerce and help that e-commerce presence grow. And it's been great because we've implemented things like product reviews that they didn't have before, so many of their loyal customers that love their products, that love our products, can share those really positive statements with others and help us to share that social proof online.
One of the things that's so fascinating about your story, and we're going to unfold this here very quickly for you, is, as we all know, B2B marketing is a journey, but it's a journey that's going to take a separate path, a different path, and sometimes you've got to choose which path to take.
Yep.
And Lori, I think your takeaways for the B2B marketing audience today are going to resonate because here we are in a time of great uncertainty yet again.
Yeah.
Here we are with people wondering this and wondering that, and especially marketers caught in the middle between being overhead and having no budget or being forced from on high to say, okay, these marketers must produce more lead generation, so on and so forth. So they've got to take a leap of faith. They've got to take some tough challenges. They got to make some tough choices. And boy, have you done that. So we think your story is going to resonate with, the folks that need to kind of do the same thing you've been doing for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. And Nors and Lefse, so they, like a lot of our business is retail, but we have wholesale customers as well. And the thing I think is really interesting as I think about these times of uncertainty we're in is that many times people are thinking about how do we make decisions with how can we move forward with maybe less resources than we've had to move forward with in the past. And certainly that has been a challenge. Like even though I both own an e-commerce agency and Nors and Lefse as a manufacturing company, we still have our own financials at Nors and Lefse. We have to manage to a budget. And so we have to figure out, at the size we are with the resources we have, what next steps make sense that can help us grow and move forward, which I think is a common thing for any B2B business.
Can I ask you your process around that? I know that our listeners would probably appreciate, and it's probably really relevant as they're listening to you talk about the things that they're facing.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about or tips about how you manage to that, or mistakes you've made that you've learned from?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so one thing I can say is that both from my time at Brilliance and at Nors and Lefse, it's so important to think about how to keep the work that you're doing as small as possible. So as an example, when we moved from Wix to BigCommerce, our site wasn't mobile responsive. And there were a ton of things that we knew we wanted to make better. And also we wanted to say, if we try and do all the things we want to do, it's going to take too long and cost too much. Like, how can we keep what we're trying to accomplish really small so that we can get it live and then keep improving? And so we were able to get our new site live within 3 months. And it didn't have all the things we wanted. But then we kept a list of all the things we couldn't get to, and we've been prioritizing. And so I think just that idea of like small iterative steps, making a backlog or a list of tasks, having a budget. We have so many hours a month that we have dedicated to improving our online presence. And it may, whether that's for your e-commerce site or some other aspect of your marketing efforts, to figure out, with whatever resources you have, like, what are the next steps that you could take to move it forward?
And that makes sense because, you need what's our minimum viable product to get it out there, and then you phase out the phased out approach. So that makes a great deal of sense.
And
Absolutely.
I also think your experience speaks directly to things that B2B marketers are really overlooking today. When you went out and learned about customer experience and how better to automate it and what digital tools could we use there, I think there's a great dot that we can connect for our audience based on what you've done.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that was really interesting, so I have all this experience from an e-commerce perspective, and from a technical perspective of here's some great things we can do, but there's a reality of how those things come into play operationally. So, we have a small team at Nors and Lefse who's a customer service team of just a few people, and they're the ones answering the phones every day. And we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if we built a feature that let people, because for Lefse, you often order it for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. And so what if we, in our checkout, let people pick a future delivery date for their Lefse? That would be something that would be convenient digitally. And it was. We built it and people loved it. A lot of people used it, but you know what happened? Our internal customer service team was overwhelmed because our internal systems weren't very good at managing orders for a future delivery date. And so they had all these pieces of paper around, with all these notes to themselves. And they were like, this isn't going to work. So we turned it off. We said, the good news is we learned something, right? We learned that is something people want. And someday we should do it again when our systems are better. But then also we ran into an instance where our marketing was so good, we ran out of inventory in our busy season, which isn't great, but it's what happened. And so then the phone was ringing off the hook with people who were like, where's my Lefse? I've always ordered from you. And so then it was thinking about, how do we leverage our digital presence to communicate to, we had a digital wait list. We promised to email people. So how can we be communicating with people? So I think one of my lessons learned has been like wherever you're at in your process from a marketing perspective, from B2B and retail, I think thinking about what is it your customer service and sales teams are dealing with on a day-to-day basis and how can you use what you're doing to support them?
One of the themes here that's kind of resonating, Lori, is that you are not afraid to take on a challenge. You are not afraid to take on a risk.
Yeah.
And you are accustomed now to taking leaps of faith. Now, my question is, we all know a lot of marketers. All of us know a lot of marketers. And there's kind of two types, I think, sometimes. Those who go forward, despite what the times are, and grab the opportunity out there, and those that just fall back, keep in line, and keep their head in the sand. Marketing is data-driven. You drown in the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But my question to you is, how can marketers listening to this learn from your story about when you've got the data, you've got an informed decision that you can make, and now it's go time to trust your gut or not? Can you talk about that and how you did that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, we're all swimming in so much data, right? And sometimes it can almost immobilize us. And so I think, what I've done at Nords and Lefse and also at Brilliance is to outline some very specific goals. Like, here's what we're working to accomplish this year, and sharing those goals with our team, and creating a scorecard to track our progress towards those goals and to work that together. And then figuring out, like coming back to that idea of small iterative steps. I think the key is like a bias for action. Like to know that we learn together. And you talked about, we all have different approaches and there's so many opportunities from a marketing perspective. The key is to be trying things and to measure them. And also to know that like the way that you're trying things isn't you manage your risk and trying, like, how can we try things in a small way and learn from it and figure out what we want to invest in it more.
I see. I love that because to Mark's point in what you're saying is people who aren't willing to take a risk aren't going to succeed. You've got to take risks. But when they're calculated, like I loved what you said about, having people being able to order ahead, but you turned that off because it was a risk you took and you learned something from it, right?
Yeah.
So when you have to have an appetite for risk, can you talk a little bit personally about like, how come you have an appetite for risk? What can you attribute that to? Like, and what is it like, you know what I mean? Because we're all looking at ourselves individually as marketers.
Yeah.
How can you adopt an appetite for risk? And how did that happen for you?
I mean, I think that's a learning process. I think it is something that I've been doing this for a while. And in the beginning, I had a smaller appetite for risk. But I've learned that, risk, in some ways, risk can be fun if you manage it well, right? There's a book by Amy Edmondson on the right kind of wrong.
Oh, I like that.
It's all about intelligent failure. And it's about how when we can frame failure correctly and give ourselves permission to step into it, that's really when we have an opportunity to innovate. And at Brilliance, our purpose is empowering long-term success on a foundation of continuous innovation. And you really can't innovate unless you're willing to risk. Like, right? You can't play it safe and expect to do something new or different or innovative. And I
do think there are two challenges in everything we're talking about right now. The first challenge for B2B marketers is I'm not sure they're drowning in data. I don't think they always get the kind of data that they need.
Yeah.
And then should they be able to do that and drive some insight, I think it's so difficult to sell it into their bosses and convince their bosses or persuade them that maybe this risk is worth taking. Do you have any thoughts about how they could do that?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I think the reality is that, to your first point, I think many times either because folks are so busy, they don't have the time to pull all the data together. And in other cases, the systems are not integrated in a way that allows them to pull together meaningful data to get the reports they need. So I think even identifying to say, even if we don't have the data we need, like what would it be? If we could have the data, what would it look like? And then telling other people on your team, because sometimes people can find a creative way to solve it. I think that is true. I think also thinking about, one of the, I love to read books. And one of the books I really like is a book called Radical Focus. And it's all about how to leverage, in this case, it's OKRs. And to use that with leaders. And so I think about how to communicate with leaders, here's our objective, here's what we're aiming for, here's the steps we're taking towards it. I think thinking about how can you communicate simply and show your learnings along the way is a great way to build trust with your internal leadership. From a B2B perspective, I think often one of the challenges is it can be hard. When you're marketing, it can be hard to connect the dots between we invested in this and there's this kind of a payback, right? And so I think sometimes it's thinking about, are we defining the way we think we're going to see the return correctly? Because in e-commerce specifically, it's not always that you're going to get the online order. It may be that you're giving information that causes people to buy offline. And so thinking about how do we measure that, is it just that we look at how many customers are logging in and the growth of that customer's group of business? So encouraging internally folks to celebrate wins that might not naturally be measured by some of the ways we would look at it.
And to not be too worried about a direct attribution line.
Yes.
Because everything does contribute to a sale.
Right.
No doubt about it.
Which is challenging also to think about it from your executive leadership team's perspective. They're trying to manage this budget and figure out how to make it work. So I think when you can pull a store, some organizations I've seen do this well, have sales team members share of a customer they talked to that was influenced by marketing, to share those testimonials and stories, or customer service, share how customers expressed satisfaction with,
Well, let's face it too. I mean, every CMO out there is being tasked with attribution.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or they're just a marketing department. And we've talked about this before, that makes a sell sheet or something like that, right?
Yep.
And that's not who we are. As marketers, we're strategic. We impact the sales of an organization. But it's very difficult as a CMO to be able to say to the executive leadership, because we put this out there, right? And digitally, yes, but to your point, it's the softer, quieter moments that you're not aware of. I love the idea of having the sales reps get that information in their conversations. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Because for CMOs, they need to be able to say, hey, listen, we put this campaign out there. We did this. We talked to sales and they said somebody saw that and went to the store and bought it, right?
Exactly. So you want both you do want the measurements and the metrics, but you also want to be gathering those stories and feedback because they together create a more complete picture.
Well, it always helps when the marketing department doesn't get blown to hell by some, bottom-minded CEO that can't see past the next quarterly performance. And there's a lot of that out there, so to speak.
Yeah.
My question for you is, ain't no grass growing under your feet. Ain't no grass growing under your feet. So I want to bring in the fact that your path began working for NASA. And I'd like to, can we talk about the lessons you learned, what you did for NASA, and how that's propelled you on your career today?
Yeah.
Oh, propelled. See what Mark did there?
Nice
We're going to start dropping that.
I like it. Yeah. So I went to school in computer electrical engineering at Purdue, and through an internship ended up at NASA, and eventually worked as a flight controller for the INCO group for the space shuttle program. So we managed the instrumentation and communications, and my specific job initially was as a data comm, so I controlled the onboard data recorders on the space shuttle. So kind of like turning on and off a VCR tape, if people know what that is anymore. but I was responsible for making sure that we were always capturing data on the space shuttle, which was really amazing. What was amazing about the experience, I started there while I was still in college and eventually went to work after I graduated. What was amazing was working in an environment where, really people's lives were on the line, and you're doing something. When you think about innovation, you think about NASA and something so amazingly complex that's happening, and yet operationally to prepare yourself to be ready. to really work well as a team. And so I have learned so much from that I've been able to put into practice in my businesses, in the sense that really having great training systems, practicing in advance for what you're going to be doing together. So like at NASA, we were practicing for space flight. At Brilliance, we practice for our go live for a customer's e-commerce site, right? At Norza and Lefsa, we practice for our Lefsa production. We have some test runs with new equipment before we move it into our main manufacturing line. But it's always thinking about that aspect of operational excellence and also how you communicate as a team. So at NASA, it was really important. If you've seen Apollo 13, we have the headsets, like how we talk with each other. It's really clear what expectations exist for people on the team and how we support each other. And so that's just something that I've really enjoyed thinking about, how those parallels exist within business as a whole.
I'm sure at NASA, there isn't any opportunity to implement a test and learn strategy. But the rest of us definitely need a test and learn strategy. And it did sound like you were able to apply some of that thinking, in your other businesses. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how to set up a better test and learn strategy. Yeah.
I mean, I think about, how do I identify like what it is that we're trying, going back to like, what are our goals? And then thinking of like, what are the possible paths to get there? And having a hypothesis of like, here's, in our case at Norza and Lefsa, we wanted to improve our conversion rate on the site. And so we identified a number of things that we thought could help us to do that. And then we started to execute on those things, and then having the metrics to see how well those helped us or not. And sometimes you find, surprises. So like and you want to enable that information you're learning to help you. So it could be that you build a better site, and yet your conversion rate isn't as great as you expected because you're getting traffic. We turned on some new forms of paid traffic, some traffic that was less targeted than others. Less targeted traffic, even if you've got a better website, isn't going to convert as well. And so it's a matter of both, like you'll have your well-informed expectations of things you're going to try, but then also staying curious as you're looking at what's actually happening and learning from the experiences you go.
I think curiosity is the big thing, right?
Yeah.
But I loved what you said about this is, universal for any successful team, the training and the practice. And you were talking about CEOs who bury their heads in the sand. I think having a culture where you set up great training, you give people an opportunity to practice is really the way to go. I can't imagine working at NASA, first of all. My IQ is like 3. But beyond that, it's the margin for error is so small.
Right.
So I think having the training and practice methodologies in place in any organization is going to be important in terms of seeing success in the end.
Absolutely. And even though like we aren't trying brand new things at NASA, they would have environments where they would try things.
Sure.
It just wouldn't be on the space flight, right? They would know where it was appropriate to try something new. And also thinking about like, how can we, it was our responsibility to say something if we saw something that didn't look right, and we knew that. And so everybody knows what their role is. And I think sometimes in marketing teams, one of the dangers can be that people don't feel psychological safety in terms of speaking up if they have an idea or in challenging someone else on the team. So at Brilliance, one of our values is that we believe in trust through healthy conflict. And we believe that we're better service providers to our customers if we tell them when we think they're wrong, which, and we will do what they ask us to regardless because they're paying us. But it is also our job to say if we think they're making a mistake. And I think that is true often for internal marketing teams. There can be some fear of speaking up. But I think if you thinking about that CEO, like I would say to the CEO, and I believe this is true, if I tell my team, if you all just agree with me, like that's not super valuable. Like I need someone to tell me if I'm making a mistake, please. That's really important.
I know agencies who have won $3 million accounts by telling the prospective client that what they're trying to achieve with the dollar amount that they're trying to achieve, it was impossible. So I think that I love that type of culture. I forgot how you just phrased it, but
trust through healthy conflict is what I call it.
Conflict.
Yeah.
I love that. That's
it is.
great.
It's a great concept.
Kind of a lightning round question here, Lori, which is from your experience and your life story, can you name 2 takeaways that marketers should learn about taking a risk and how to do it? 2 best practices. What do you think?
2 best practices that marketers should take away.
On risk taking.
On risk taking. Yes. Sorry. I may need a moment to think about this. Did we already prep for this? No. Okay.
No, Mark has a tendency to
ask
just
questions that are off script.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Okay. That's all right.
Journalist.
That's all right. I'll just share. So my 2 takeaways on risk taking. One would be to I think the key is to go back to what is your vision? Where are you headed? What are your values? What do you believe to be true? And then to take action. So to not wait and not be afraid, to look at what can I do to move forward with whatever resources you have. So that would be one, is to within the understanding of your vision and values, what could be your next step? And I think my other recommendation around risk taking would be to really think about how you create a team around you that can support you in that process. And so I think for most marketers I know are overworked. They have too much on their plate, and they're continually asked for more and more from their executive, right? And so thinking about how do they both ask their executive for what they need in terms of resources, but then also set good expectations for what is possible with what they have. Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Well, Laura, you have given us so many great takeaways today. In addition to those 2 on risk taking, we learned a lot, and we cannot thank you enough for being here with us. We've certainly enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
And I think Lefsa would make a great gift for our sponsors.
Absolutely, yes.
In the meantime, I want people to know where they can contact you if they'd like to continue the conversation or buy some Lefsa.
Yes.
And that's at brillianceweb.com, correct?
Yeah, brillianceweb.com. And norsanlefsa.com. Yes.
Excellent. Well, again, we thank Lori McDonald, and I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Motion Agency. They are one of the premier B2B marketing services firm in the country. They're ranked number 3 as the growing B2B agency. And I'd also like to thank Embaz. Embaz is a marketing consultant firm that specializes in content, strategy, and business change.
And hey, don't forget to watch us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can always check us out at b2bnobull.com. That's B2, bnobull.com. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.